Here we begin with a comparative adverb, serious, that means later, and then we're followed with a perfect active participle. At this point, we can tell that the participle is describing our subject and it's nominative, but we don't know what the subject is. So we'll say something like having left later. We know that the subject is Pyramus. It comes way down here. This is significant because the first word that we have is later, and then the last word is Pyramus. So Pyramus physically shows up later in the line or in the clause here. So Pyramus is our subject. So Pyramus saw the out of space up here. So I'm going to just dot it down here. With Stygia, we have a prepositional phrase. Then we have this adjective character that goes with Stygia. It is a hyperbaton; those are pretty far apart. So maybe showing the depth of the footprints in the deep dust or sand sort of stuff here. Feri is going to be genitive, so we'll make that of, and then we have our que jumping in front, and that's going to connect our two verbs. So vidit and then expaluit. And toto and ore go together, and this makes for a nice word picture where his whole face encircles his growing pale. All right, and next we have an oot. When you have an oot, often think of subjunctive, but look for your verb. Here it is, repair it. Another good enjambment as well. And this is not subjunctive, which means we translate our oot as. So as, and then again, Pyramus is your subject. Westum is your direct object. And then tinctam is going to describe Westum, and this is a perfect passive participle. And again, this could be considered an enjambment as well, since they're kind of far apart. So he recognized the cloth stained, or he came upon the cloth stained, and then sanguine, just with blood, and so that's Thisbe's veil. And then he starts speaking, and so we have one next to two, so kind of creating a dichotomy here. So we've got one going with nox, and then duos going with amantes, creating a nice synthesis, for us. And then our verb is peridet. We talked about this in class. Peridet is in the future tense, and it shows up later on in the story. So kind of a reflection of what's going to happen here. So one night will destroy two lovers. Then we have a relative clause right here. So the quibus from whom will refer back to the lovers. That's its antecedent. And then you notice that there's a lot of words with A endings. So if you scan your text, you've got A, that A is long, and then this A is long as well. So this is short, which makes it our subject, and it refers to Thisbe. So she, fuit, and then that describes her. And this is another superlative here. And it takes an ablative, so the most deserving of longa vita. And then this is pretty straightforward. He says nostra, and if you remember from the text, this means mea, so like my anima, my soul is guilty. So he feels like it's his fault. And so he goes into that in this next part, and he starts with ego, and then he's got te right next to it. So that's a great juxtaposition. So they're so close together, but then we get this verb here, parami, which means I have destroyed or I've killed you. So direct object, miseranda is vocative. It looks like it's a gerundive, but it's just an adjective describing Thisbe. So she's the one who's miserable. And then we have, this is a little bit complicated. I'm going to jump to this qui. So qui should come in the beginning of the clause, but it doesn't. So there you go. The antecedent of qui is ego. So I who ordered. We're going to supply like a te for our direct object, you, and then also supply an oot with this when erase. And so that's going to introduce an indirect command for us. And they'll do this sometimes where they leave out the oot. So I ordered you, te, oot to venires. Nocte is ablative of time. I'd say at for that. And then this tells us where he's ordered her to come. And I did not, nec, veni, come here earlier. So he's taking on the blame. And again, that's reflected in the writing where he shows up later. Then he switches gears and he's no longer talking to Thisbe. We can tell because in this imperative, it's a plural imperative. So he's talking to more than one individual. The nostrum is again like the may up here. So it'll be like meum, my body. This is a direct object. Remember that corpus is neuter, so that US can be either your subject or your direct object. In this case, it is our direct object coming after dualite. We have a second imperative right here, consumate. This is kind of graphic. He says consume, like devour my wicked, and then viscera means entrails or guts, essentially, and then Pharaoh Morsu with a fierce bite. And so when you're reading that, you're like, who are we talking to? And then this final line tells us, here it is, the lions. So we're talking to lions. So, oh, whatever lions live under this cliff. So right here we have a pretty good synthesis. And again, up here, this makes for a really nice synthesis too. Just keep in mind.